The courtroom was so silent that even a single breath sounded louder than thunder. Everyone believed the old man standing there was moments away from losing everything. The judge adjusted his glasses while the prosecutor confidently demanded a life sentence. But suddenly two young men stood up, their voices shaking the entire courtroom. "Your Honor, if this man is guilty, then we are guilty too." The crowd gasped because nobody expected those words from the two strangers. What nobody in that courtroom knew was a story buried 18 years deep. A story about kindness, sacrifice, and a man who chose love over everything else. And trust me, once you hear the truth, you might question everything you assumed. So stay with me, because this story begins on a freezing winter night. 18 years earlier, a storm raged across a quiet rural town. The wind howled through broken fences while snow covered empty dirt roads. A poor ranch worker named Thomas rode home slowly after an exhausting day. His horse suddenly stopped beside a broken-down car abandoned near the roadside. At first Thomas thought nobody could possibly survive inside such freezing darkness. But then he heard something faint, two tiny cries hidden beneath the wind. He opened the car door and saw two frightened white toddler boys shivering together. Their parents were nowhere around, only an empty highway stretching endlessly ahead. Thomas wrapped them inside his coat without thinking twice about the consequences. That moment would change not only his life but the boys' futures forever. Thomas was a simple man who barely earned enough money for himself. His wooden cabin leaked during rain and barely stayed warm during winter nights. Yet when he looked at those frightened little boys clinging to his jacket, something changed inside him. He carried them home, warmed milk on the stove, and whispered calming words softly. Neighbors warned him that raising children would destroy his already fragile life. Some people even mocked him for raising children who did not look like him. But Thomas ignored every cruel comment and every doubtful whisper around town. To him those boys were not strangers anymore, they were family now. He named them Daniel and Samuel, promising silently he would never abandon them. From that night forward, Thomas became their father in every way that mattered. Life was never easy inside that small wooden cabin near the dusty farmland. Thomas worked sunrise to sunset fixing fences, feeding cattle, and repairing broken barns. Every dollar he earned went directly toward food, clothes, and school supplies. Some nights he skipped dinner completely so the boys could eat properly. Despite the struggle, laughter filled the cabin almost every single evening. Daniel loved reading stories aloud while Samuel built wooden toys beside the fireplace. Thomas watched them grow stronger, kinder, and smarter every passing year. Even when people whispered about their unusual family, the boys stood proudly beside him. They called him Dad with absolute certainty and unconditional love. For Thomas, hearing that single word made every hardship worth enduring. But kindness sometimes creates enemies in places nobody expects or understands. A powerful land developer named Richard Keller wanted Thomas's farmland badly. The land contained valuable resources hidden beneath the soil, worth millions of dollars. Thomas refused every offer because that land held memories of raising his sons. Keller grew furious and quietly began planning a cruel revenge against the stubborn rancher. Soon mysterious problems started appearing around Thomas's property and livestock. Broken gates, missing equipment, and strange accusations spread throughout the small town. People who once respected Thomas slowly began questioning his honesty and character. Rumors twisted the truth until kindness started looking suspicious to outsiders. And eventually those lies would explode into a terrifying courtroom battle. One terrible night a large barn belonging to Keller burned completely to ashes. The flames painted the sky red while sirens echoed across the sleeping town. Authorities arrived quickly and someone claimed they saw Thomas near the property earlier. Without real investigation, suspicion immediately focused on the quiet rancher. Police searched his cabin and claimed they discovered tools linked to the fire. Thomas insisted he was innocent, but the town already believed the worst. Handcuffed and exhausted, he was taken away while neighbors watched silently. Daniel and Samuel were teenagers then, standing frozen on the dusty roadside. They shouted desperately as the police car disappeared into the dark distance. That night their world collapsed in ways they could barely understand. The trial moved slowly while evidence seemed to stack unfairly against Thomas. Witnesses repeated rumors instead of facts, painting him as a jealous, angry man. Prosecutors described him as someone desperate enough to destroy another man's property. Thomas sat quietly, knowing truth alone might not save him anymore. Years passed while Daniel and Samuel grew into determined young men. They studied law, justice, and every detail surrounding the strange case. The more they researched, the clearer one disturbing truth became obvious. Evidence against Thomas was weak, manipulated, and suspiciously convenient for Keller. But proving that corruption required courage far greater than ordinary people possess. So the two brothers made a life-changing decision that shocked everyone. On the final day of court, the room filled with tension thicker than smoke. Reporters prepared their cameras while the judge reviewed the closing arguments carefully. Prosecutors confidently demanded life imprisonment for what they called a calculated crime. Thomas lowered his head quietly, accepting a fate he never truly deserved. But suddenly Daniel and Samuel stood up from the crowded wooden benches. Their voices were steady even though emotion filled every word they spoke. They announced they had uncovered hidden financial records linking Keller to insurance fraud. The barn fire was planned to collect millions from a massive insurance payout. More shocking evidence revealed someone bribed witnesses to accuse Thomas falsely. The courtroom erupted with whispers as truth finally pushed through the darkness. Daniel explained carefully how Keller's company was drowning in secret debt. Insurance money from the destroyed barn would solve every financial problem overnight. Samuel presented documents proving Keller's workers planted tools near Thomas's property. Witnesses who testified earlier suddenly looked nervous and avoided eye contact. The judge ordered immediate investigation into the explosive new evidence presented. Within hours, investigators confirmed several shocking details hidden for years. Keller's assistant confessed privately about the entire fraudulent plan collapsing now. The powerful developer who once controlled the town suddenly faced criminal charges himself. Thomas sat silently, tears forming as hope returned after years of despair. And the two boys he raised now stood like shields protecting their father. The judge returned later with a decision that silenced every voice inside the room. All charges against Thomas were immediately dismissed due to fabricated and corrupted evidence. An investigation opened against Keller for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted wrongful imprisonment. For the first time in years, Thomas finally stood free without chains. Daniel and Samuel rushed forward, embracing the man who saved their lives. Cameras captured the emotional moment as the courtroom applauded loudly. Some neighbors who once doubted Thomas lowered their heads in shame. The truth had survived years of lies, manipulation, and quiet suffering. And the bond between father and sons proved stronger than injustice. Sometimes family is not about blood but about the sacrifices made daily. Later, outside the courthouse, the sun shone warmly across the quiet town streets. Thomas looked at the two grown men standing proudly beside him. He remembered the freezing night when he first carried them from that car. Back then he never imagined they would one day save him. Daniel smiled and said softly that love always finds its way back home. Samuel added that the lessons Thomas taught them guided every decision they made. Kindness, loyalty, and courage had shaped them more than any school ever could. Thomas realized the greatest wealth he ever built was standing right there. Two sons who refused to let the world destroy the man who raised them. And in that moment every hardship suddenly felt like a blessing. Stories like this remind us that compassion often plants seeds we cannot immediately see. A single act of kindness can grow quietly for years before revealing its true power. Thomas never raised those boys expecting anything in return someday. He simply followed his heart when two frightened children needed protection most. But life has a strange way of returning goodness in unexpected moments. 18 years later, those same boys became the voice that saved him. Their loyalty turned a hopeless courtroom into a place of justice. And their courage proved that love can outlast even the darkest accusations. So maybe the real miracle was never the trial itself. Maybe the miracle was the family built from compassion that snowy night. If this story moved you even a little, I want to hear your thoughts. Do you believe kindness always finds its way back to the people who give it? Stories like this remind us that the world still holds incredible humanity. So take a moment and share your opinion down in the comments below. And if you enjoy powerful real-life style stories like this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story. Hit that like button because it really helps the channel grow. Share this video with someone who believes kindness still matters in this world. Your support keeps these meaningful stories alive and reaching more people. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next story.